and welcome back to another live video. We've been really enjoying doing these live videos and we've had some great feedback, so we're really excited to carry on doing these for you. Today we've got Neill, my dad, here with us again. So hi Neill, thank you for joining.
Hi, Irene, my daughter.
So last week there was a big virtual conference called BIO, which stands for Business in Oxford. And this is kind of a chance for the businesses in and around Oxfordshire to showcase their technologies, their company, the developments they've been making. And as part of that conference, there were opportunities to do presentations on notable topics, from growing your business to HR management to cybersecurity, which is obviously something that is really big at the moment and something CIS is very passionate about, and promoting security for businesses. And Neill was very fortunate to be invited to speak at the conference about the hidden dangers of working from home with business IT. And it was really well received, this presentation. And we wanted to share it with you because it has some great tips and it's really relevant, obviously, at the moment. So thank you, Neill, for offering to do this again for us. And over to you.
Great, thanks, Erin. Well, look, it was a privilege to present at BIO. It's a really big event once a year, gives us a real good chance to connect with people and to explain current thinking that we're doing. And some of the topics that we're hearing most about at the moment is that if companies are now working from home, how has that changed things? So I've got a presentation here I'd like to run through. It's about 15 minutes, just to really set out some of the core things that people really ought to be aware of. So let me just pop that onto presentation mode there. Great, I think we've got that there. Okay, so the hidden dangers of working from home with business IT. So this is a thought piece really to try and explain to people what they should be thinking about. And what I'd like to do is just cover what this presentation has as content, presented by myself, obviously Neill Lawson-Smith. I'm the founder of the business 31 years ago. And this presentation is about working from home and the changes that have happened and the challenges and the workarounds that are now arising. Some of them obvious, some of them not so obvious. And that's the kind of point of the presentation, it's awareness. And we're going to look at some of the hidden dangers, some of the things that you might not have seen, the new risks that get introduced behind the scenes that you really perhaps didn't anticipate, and that will then lead to the threat. And it's really that we're trying to help people consider. To try and help balance that, we've got some tips and some tricks and some strategies, some ideas that you can adopt for yourself and hopefully for your businesses, and keep yourself safe there. And finally, where do you go from here? What sort of things really should you be thinking about in the, not the immediate term, but perhaps over the next few weeks and months? So straight onto the presentation here, we've got working from home. It's the evolving frontier, that's what we've called it, and it really is a rapid change. And as soon as the lockdown happened in March, the whole landscape changed, which meant that remote IT systems were really the norm, and where that perhaps had been a flexible working policy, or perhaps some way that people could work from home once a week or once every couple of weeks, it now became everybody, if you can work from home, you should do. So that put a real strain on companies, and most of them enacted their disaster recovery plans. And that meant that they blew the dust off that and said, right, let's see if we can get this to work. And on the whole, they pretty much did. But now that time has marched on a bit and people have been at home for quite some weeks, we're looking at those temporary plans becoming a lot firmer. That people are now reassessing, actually, when this pandemic is over, do we go back to working in a central office, or actually, now we're settled, do we carry on working from home, and do we stay in this sort of configuration? So to support that, a lot of companies are looking at new IT systems and what are those new security risks that come along with that. So the risk landscape has changed, and that's why it needs a bit of a rethink. So just let's have a quick summarize of what that meant. So on COVID lockdown day, when that actual day happened, would you say that your business, when you thought about it, when you sat down in the cold light of day, did it underpin your business or did it undermine it? So really, was your IT helping you transition from the central office to working in a distributed remote fashion. And I think probably there was a general mix of it. There were some good parts, but obviously I think some things that came out, perhaps the disaster plans weren't as up to date or as tested, or perhaps ever tested to the point where the entire company had to depend on it rather than just a few key people. So let's have a look at how the landscape's changed, and we've got a little schematic here. So here's the typical office situation you have for a company. Central servers, a number of staff using internal computers and connected to the internet. No great surprises there. And then this is how typically the cyber threat evolves. So you have what we call bad actors coming through the internet and trying to attack the central company through the firewall there that connects to the internet. Now, obviously, the good thing is that a lot of people have invested in some good centralized security and a strong firewall. So that'd be, good centralized investment there that's going to protect the company. However, with the lockdown, everybody disappeared from the offices and started working from home. As you can see here now, we have what's called a dispersed security model. And why that's relevant is because the hackers and the cyber criminals spotted that and said, well, actually, let's start attacking the home environments, because that's actually a point of weakness potentially. And through that, they would then launch themselves as a platform then back into the company. So it really came down to how strong were the home setups, and that was probably the variable that had never really been assessed. So the sort of challenges and workarounds that we saw was, first of all, even getting hold of laptops. That was really tough. There were very few, rarer than hen's teeth. So a lot of people resorted to using their home PCs or just getting old kit out, perhaps old laptops, just so that there was some availability. So there was an issue with old operating systems, old software, just to try and get a working environment. Access to the company data, well, it was all centralized before, and now we had to use VPNs and swapping to maybe Dropbox or OneDrive, and it was pretty much let's get something that we can do and make work. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a great deal of planning involved. Wasn't always the case, but that's one of the things. One of the things we did see a lot of was that the data links weren't really up to scratch, and that the home environments varied tremendously. So some people had a very good experience, some were hindered quite considerably, and that really was dependent on where you live and the facilities available. Communications was a topic that we saw. People immediately jumped onto Zoom and Teams and to look at their phone systems, because those telephone systems that they bought some years ago may have sat with a physical box on the wall in the office and dealt with all the telephone calls. Well, how would it be that people would phone you the next day and you couldn't even answer their calls or take sales inquiries or support inquiries? So communications provided a real headache, and likewise, considerations about printing. All of a sudden, people didn't have printers or access to that, so they were looking at using PDFs or bureaus. Some had local printers, but they were not designed for high volume. So often workarounds were just literally to stick with PDFs. There was finally a couple of aspects with accessing their full system. So some software isn't designed to work on a laptop, particularly big databases, perhaps drawing systems. So there was a very tough part for those people that depend on those sorts of systems. Perhaps any manufacturing systems that required physical printing of maybe labels to go on to products. And finally, one of the obvious things actually was the privacy and noise of working from home. So people working out of kitchens, bedrooms, living rooms, and obviously sharing that with other members of their family. Very difficult to have a separate working space where you can have private conversations or conversations with your customers without the PlayStation or the dishwasher or the doorbell going. So people often had to think about the certain times that they could do that. So there was quite some challenges there. So the hidden dangers, the sort of new risks that come up. Well, because people are working around remotely, data starts being spread all over the place, and it's difficult to keep track of that. So there's version control, who's got the latest version, there's theft, there's loss, there's confidentiality. how do we back all this stuff up? This stuff is being put all over the various computers and systems of your staff. Is that a GDPR issue as well? We're definitely thinking about cyber threats. So this is the one we pointed to out in the diagram, that there is an obvious attack point for the cyber criminals to try and get into your systems through their back door. So you have to be really careful with your cyber threats, because immediately you're into data loss. We've seen huge peaks, a 50% increase in phishing emails where they're trying to get into your systems. So there's a real threat there. Home PCs, well, you've got this duality of use. You can't control the software, the security and privacy. The antivirus typically on home systems won't be as good as the technology that you'd have as paid for in the office. And then there's also the question about how do you back that up? What are you backing up? How fast are they? There's very little control. You've also got to think about things like the home broadband. Often people have something at home that suits their domestic environment, and it really isn't up to the scratch of what a business would provide if it had the choice. So, for example, a lot of people don't realise that home broadbands, if they fail, there is no comeback on getting those fixed. There's a extended service level, which means you can be without it for a week, and there's no comeback. There's nothing you can do. And that, for a business, to have one of the members of staff not able to do that, it would be quite business critical. I'm talking about business criticality. Well, people use their disaster recovery plans, and that was plan A. Well, what's plan B now? Now you use plan A. What have you got now in case of these various other failures that are going to happen with your staff working from home? How's that going to actually work? What can you do? And that really needs a real thinking about. And not surprisingly, IT support has changed, where we typically work with skilled engineers or skilled staff actually in a customer's own premises. It's difficult now because they're obviously geographically spread. There was no traveling, so it's very difficult to go out and see these people. So there's a whole new set of skills involved in terms of maintaining a remote environment. And is that centralized, one person in the central office able to deal with it, or actually is it a time to revisit outsourcing with people like CIS that could do this sort of thing, where we can manage all that for you? So tips, tricks and strategies. So one of the things to do is to make sure that your home workers have a business level of IT set up at home, and that includes the communication. So that's an extra line which is dedicated for business use. There's business IT, computer, telephones, printing, Wi-Fi, all the security, so it's ring fenced. You also have to look at the firewall and the security software. So this technology called multi-factor authentication is a very big technology push at the moment on that. That's where you've seen that apart from your password, you also have a number sent to your mobile phone, and when you log in, so that you need both of those to get into the system. So that's a really good level of security, and we're encouraging people to follow that up. And also endpoint auditing. So endpoint is the end where the staff are actually using the technology, and auditing makes sure that you're being able to control that there are antivirus in places, that the data is being backed up, where the data is and it's not leaking out anywhere, and that you are controlling that side of things. You can extend existing technology. So bear in mind that although you've got centralized business IT historically, that a lot of the companies and technologies have the ability to do remote versions. So extend that strength further out to the individual users and to their computers. So that means you can enhance and send out and protect remotely what you used to do centrally. So that's well worth exploring and making sure you've got that level of security and peace of mind in place. Use business rated internet links. So it's not only just the home links that you've got to think about, but also bear in mind that now you've got all these people converging on the office, that actually you need to make sure that if there is or are services still required at the central location, that the actual link to the office is still secure, stable, and it's scaled. And you always have to do like a reverse calculation to work out, rather than the traffic coming out of all the office, actually you're going into the office now. So there's a thing to think about there. You've got to think about the remote printing and scanning, and also have you thought about perhaps moving servers to offsite secure data centers? So we have a private cloud, and some of our customers have said, you know what, we're not going to be in our HQ now. We're going to take all our IT and we're going to put it in an offsite data center. So we can literally take what is an entire company's IT system, put it into a secure data center, and then that's got all the power, backup, the links, all the data communications that keeps it safe. And also have a look at deploying secure cloud storage, because that's your OneDrive, your Dropbox. You can use those. There are some real issues in terms of privacy, storage, and making sure that the permissions. It's really important to make sure that the backup's in place, because when you look at it, look at the detail, the small print, you'll find that's not the same as perhaps you had in the office. So just to kind of give you a little diagram of how this played out, here we have a home PC and obviously linking to the business. Well, typically we saw people link those into the office via a VPN and perhaps set up a Dropbox or OneDrive account or Google Drive, whichever your particular preference was, as a temporary workaround. Well, those things are inherently have their weaknesses and lack of controls and oversight. So what we suggest is, look, put your PC to one side, keep your home PC for your home access only, ring fence a business laptop or business PC with VoIP, its own internet line and printing and scanner, and have it dedicated coming into the office. And that can be really tied down securely so that happens. And then you use that to access your computers that historically are in the office, and they in turn allow you to get to the main server databases in a secure fashion. So you can set this chain up really securely. Alternatively, you can move your server off to, as I mentioned earlier, a private cloud. So that's a data center there. And then that takes the load off the business and allows everyone to participate in the same sort of secure way of accessing data, but through a private cloud. So where do we go from here? Well, you must assume that if you're changing things on this scale, that everything is at risk, particularly your data, unless you're proven otherwise. Rethink your data security and backups. It needs revisiting and checking where the loopholes are. Move your IT to potentially to a secure cloud system. That gives you lots of options. Look at the terminal server technology. So this is something we do for a lot of clients. St. Paul's, for example, is one customer that we did that for. They immediately transitioned from a sort of central office location to external and simply scaled up this remote access technology. And it made the whole transition A, secure, and B, workable for all their staff, whatever the type of communications that they had. Revisit your plans for GDPR and backup and disaster recovery. You must rethink those three. So look, we're in the business of helping people. So we've kind of made some resources available. Erin's going to put up these links at the end. So we've done a couple of little wizards to help you they're online. So it's, are you at risk? We've got this business risk test that you can go through. It's like a wizard, and it will just tell you on a rating of whether you're at risk or not, and whether you need to do something about that. And we also have an Are You Ready, which is another wizard to help you and say, have you really thought about all the aspects of remote working? So these are just free. You can just click through and see how you get on with those, and that'll be very helpful for that. We're also offering some free consultancy sessions for 15 minutes with our senior team if you'd like to take those up, if you've got any concerns. So that's for anybody that's watching that would like to follow that up. Anyway, so that's the presentation that I gave to Bio. Hope you found that interesting. Hoping now to kind of pick up from there and to put the offers out there to people and to see if there's any sort of further interest. Okay, Erin.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, that was for Bio initially, but we really appreciate that you were happy to share that with everyone on our page as well, because there's some really great tips. And I know we say it every week, especially at the moment, but it's so true. Like, this is an ongoing situation, and it's really important to think about all of these things you've mentioned. And you spoke particularly about how, you know, it does your IT underpin or undermine your business, you know, on COVID lockdown day, and even now, really. And if you're watching and it's made you think more about that, then as Neill already mentioned, we have these two little kind of pop quiz tests. So you can kind of challenge yourself and see how you score. Maybe you are super prepared, but maybe you're not as prepared as you think. So take our tests and see how you score, and let us know. Actually, let us know how you do. And obviously, if you need any help, then you can get in contact with us. And we've got this offer at the moment, as Neill mentioned, for a free 15-minute consultation with our senior team. So any questions, any queries, get in touch with us. I just wanted to mention briefly as well. You mentioned the huge increase in phishing emails as part of your presentation, and we actually posted, I think it was yesterday, we've got a video about this that Neill, you actually made for us, about just a short, I think it's about a minute and a half video about how to check if something is actually a scam or if it's a legitimate email contact. So if you're interested in watching that, then you can find that on our social media, and it's also on our blog page. If you go to cisltd.com, then you can find that there as well. Thank you so much for everyone who's watched, and thank you, Neill, for giving your presentation. Next week, we will be focusing on data backups and disaster plans, which you already mentioned briefly, but it's so important. We want to go into more detail about that. So we're really looking forward to seeing you back here then. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next week.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Cheerio.
you. Bye.